Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brigitte Bertrand from Space Matrix. I am the Associate Director of Workplace Services, and welcome to our program today. I also serve on the Coronet New England Board, and I am a member of the New England DEI Committee. It is my pleasure to introduce this program today, and as such, I will start with a few slides to just tell you about our program. So we will start with the welcoming opening remarks, and then we'll have our keynote speaker, Sheila Callahan, who is the Executive Director of the Age Equity Alliance. Our panel discussion will then include Sheila, who will have a conversation with Leslie Rice, who is the Lead Director of CVS Health, a healthcare innovation company, and Lina Barclay, who is the Manager of CVS Health, a healthcare innovation company. We will then finish the program with a Q&A session. So a little bit of logistics related to our event today. So we will ask you to be, you'll be muted and your video will be off, but we will ask you to place any questions you may have in the chat box. And during the Q&A session, the last 15 minutes of the program, Sheila will ask our speakers a few questions that you have asked for. We'd like to browse very quickly through our sponsors from our different chapters for sponsoring this event today, understanding that it's an alliance of New England, New York, Mid-Atlantic, and Connecticut. And I will just browse very quickly through all the sponsors from the different chapters. So you may see all those sponsors, and thank you to all. We could not do it without you, so we're very thankful. And here we go. So on those words, I'm going to introduce you to Sheila Callahan, who is the Executive Director of the Age Equity Alliance. So Sheila, as I mentioned, is the Executive Director of the Equity Alliance, a 501c3 partnering with businesses, organizations, and communities to create workplace age equity across the age spectrum. She's a communications and DEI subject matter, an expert with experience across the public and private sectors in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. Sheila believes that employers who proactively build diverse, multi-generational teams are in the best position to succeed in the future of work. Thank you, Sheila, and please go ahead.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It is such an honor.
I'm just going to interrupt you. If you want to unshare your notes, they're just up on the screen. Perfect. So if you just unshare that PowerPoint screen and then pull up the teleprompt again.
Bear with me, everyone.
I think if you, there you go. Just sharing and
so here we go.
Technical difficulties, but we're all used to it now.
All right, we shall try this again. And here we go. And how are we?
Looks great.
All right, let's get this puppy on the road. All right, thank you for your patience. Here we go, everyone. Hello and welcome again. It is such an honor to be here with all of you people who are dedicated to creating diverse, equitable, and inclusive organizations. I, of course, want to thank Brigitte for the invitation, Leslie Rice and Lina Barclay from CVS Health for stepping up on the virtual platform, and of course, each and every one of you for choosing to be with us during this lunch hour. No matter what dimension of diversity is being addressed, there are lots of layers and it can get complicated. And the same is true for ageism. So what I want to do with our time today is define age bias in the many ways it can show up across the age spectrum. I want to distinguish between ageism and ableism, and I want to underscore why it is urgent that organizations address ageism strategically as part of their DEI initiative. The work I've been doing with Age Equity Alliance is focused on establishing age equity as a core value for every workplace. Unfortunately, for many organizations, addressing ageism is a missing link in their efforts to build an equitable and inclusive workplace where employees feel they belong, where employees feel empowered to do their best work every day. When we think about age bias and stereotypes and discrimination, we usually think of the older worker, typically over 50. And the 50 plus cohort is where we find some of the most egregious examples of ageist behaviors. But what is important to note is that age bias can occur across the age spectrum. In fact, whenever age is used to diminish the competency and capability of someone, that's considered ageism. We also see this with young, early career employees who are dismissed regardless of their potential, or exploited with lower pay and the expectation of 24/7 availability in exchange for a ping pong table, keg beer, and free lunch on Fridays. So let's stop for a minute and think about what makes a great company anyway. Well, it depends on who you ask. Customers want quality, fair value, reliability, and a guarantee that what you are offering is the experience they can expect. Stockholders want to see increasing value in returns, and every board of directors, whether publicly traded or not, whether for-profit or nonprofit, they want to see their organizations deliver on their mission and vision. But if you ask employees what makes a great company, their answers are less about money and more about how they feel working there, how aligned they are with the mission, how much respect they have for their management, leadership, and the people they work with, and how respected they feel in return. It's about whether or not they're able to contribute to the full extent of their knowledge, skills, and abilities. What do employees really want? They want to feel like they belong. Even before the craziness of the pandemic, workplace culture carried an incredible amount of influence. A 2019 Glassdoor survey of 5,000 people reported that 77% would consider a company's culture before applying for a job, and more than half, 56%, said that a company's culture is more important than salary when it comes to job satisfaction. If belonging is about creating an environment where people feel connected to the organization and the people, how does age equity factor in? In the workplace, older employees have been disproportionately impacted by job loss, by demotions. They've been denied training opportunities and promotions, and many have been forced to retire before they're ready. They've been subjected to subtle forms of ageism, like jokes about senior moments, or assuming they can't use technology, or are unwilling to learn a new technology. It could be a comment that women should dye their hair so they don't look like, quote, a grandmother. That's one I've personally heard over the last 2 decades, and I'm not even a grandma yet. Or it could be pointed comments suggesting that older workers retire to free up positions for younger professionals. Phrases like, "You old timers need to move on," or "Aren't you retiring soon?" or "Wouldn't you rather be spending time with your grandkids?" These comments are all too common in the workplace. They are inappropriate and demonstrate the need for an organization to become educated on the issues of age equity and to create strategies addressing age bias, assumptions, stereotypes, and myths in order to eliminate the possibility of exclusion and discrimination that interfere with creating a climate of belonging. It's also critical to recognize the difference between ageism and ableism. We're ageist anytime we judge someone based on how old we think they are, and we're ableist when we judge them based on how we assume their minds or bodies function. We're ageist and ableist when we attribute capacity or incapacity to someone based on their age. For example, when recruiters or hiring managers dismiss older candidates because they think they're too old to fit into the culture, or that they might suddenly decide to retire, that's ageist. If an older candidate is dismissed because they need or might ask for an accommodation, that's ableist. If it's because a candidate, quote, at their age is considered unable or unwilling to learn the technology, that's ageist and ableist. It's estimated that most adults over 50 encounter at least one form of ageism every day. Such frequent encounters not only affect employee feelings about their company, but it can also negatively impact their mental, emotional, and physical health. What's interesting to note is that younger employees are more likely to report age discrimination than older colleagues. Psychologically speaking, employees with a perceived longer runway feel safer reporting workplace violations than older who are already in fear of being made redundant, or they already know that opportunities for older workers are limited. They know it takes older workers twice as long to find reemployment, if at all, and they know that if they do find reemployment, it will likely be for less money. So yes, older workers might not want to stick their necks out and draw that attention to themselves. It's also reported that being exposed to ageism increases a person's negative beliefs about aging. In some cases, people
Sheila, are you there with us? It looks like you froze. Yep. Okay, so we're just gonna wait for Sheila to come back in a second, and if you just please bear with us. Thank you very much. All right, so until Sheila comes back, unfortunately she froze and she's going to re-enter the Zoom in a minute. So not sure how to entertain everybody, but please just hold on for a second and she should be back in a second. And we then look forward to then have a conversation with Leslie and with Lina. And thank you to all the people who've joined us today from the Bay Area. Stacy Grubbs here. Thank you, Stacy, from saying hi. Anybody else from the Bay Area or other chapters that'd like to say hi? Oh, here we go. I think Sheila. Hi, Mark. I think Sheila is back. Thank you, Sheila.
Apologies, everyone. My goodness, this is just kind of crazy. Okay, so am I screen sharing still or no?
Nope, I think you'll have to pull up your screen again.
Okay, let's try this again.
Teleprompt first and then the PowerPoint.
You'll have to also let me know where we left off at.
Just start from when I told you you froze, Sheila, please.
Okay. Are we good?
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to where I talked about older workers might not want to stick their necks out to draw attention to themselves. So it's also reported that being exposed to ageism increases a person's negative beliefs about aging. And in some cases, people begin to believe the ageist messages they've been subjected to. For an older employee, it might sound like I'm too old to change careers at this point in my life. But for a younger employee, it might sound like I don't have enough experience to apply for that promotion. These are also examples of how those impacted by age bias also contribute to its perpetuation. Self-directed age bias means that the person doesn't realize the bias projected, and they're using that bias to inform their life and career decisions and set an expectation that others in the same cohort should behave accordingly. So in the examples I just gave, both employees were making decisions based on this self-directed implicit bias. Leading gerontologist and researcher on age and aging, Becca Levy, defines implicit bias as occurring when a culture's ageist stereotypes are internalized and they become a part of this, the subconscious framework of society, which is expressed through implicit bias. But ageism hurts younger employees too. And for younger employees, it might sound like this. They might have people talking to them as if their contributions don't matter. It could be, for example, language, the way it manifests in language, by referring to them as youngsters or kids or girls, using phrases like, when you're older, you'll understand, or phrases like, when you have more experience under your belt, come back and let's talk. Or even making generational references such as, you Gen Zers, and then fill in the blank with any common stereotype. Anytime that generational labels are used, there is high potential for ageism, whether intended or not, which is why I always advise companies to avoid using them completely. Equating age with immaturity and inexperience are examples of age bias. Even a requirement for a minimum number of years experience for a particular job could be indirectly discriminatory against a younger person, especially if the competency had already been established in less time. Here's the truth about age bias. Like bias across other dimensions of diversity, it exists because it has been woven into the fabric of our societal construct. In fact, children as early as 3 know the difference between someone who is young versus someone who is older, and they've also learned that there are negative perceptions around being older. Throughout our lives, we're bombarded with messages that cultivate negative attitudes about age and aging. And these messages can be about the aging process. They can be about fears about aging. They can be messages that dismiss younger people to bolster olders, or messages that marginalize older people by conveying that being younger is better. Here's another age-related truth. Age bias, myths, and stereotypes have the potential to amplify the impact of bias across other dimensions of diversity, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, or ability. As an example, for a Black or brown woman, ageism then becomes a triple threat for potential bias and discrimination. To change the way we want to see the world takes a strategic disruption. But why age and why now? In June of 1987, the Hudson Institute issued a report warning the US government and industries that if we were going to remain competitive in the 21st century, there were 6 challenges that we would need to address. 4 of those 6 challenges were focused on the future labor market and included the need to keep people trained on constantly changing technology, the importance of continuing to provide opportunities for brown and Black workers, and the importance of creating work-life balance for women who were primary caregivers. But the number one concern about the labor market might surprise you. It was managing an aging workforce. So that was in 1987. In 2015, 28 years later, a survey of global CEOs revealed that only 64% had diversity and inclusion strategies. And of those, only 8% included or were considering the inclusion of age as a DEI strategy. So what's happened in the last few years that has made workplace age equity more prominent than ever? It's that companies are now feeling the pinch where it most hurts, and that is available talent. Since 2011, 10,000 people have been turning 65 every single day, a trend that will continue until 2030. And likewise, the share of available talent Age 65 and over is increasing faster than any other age group between now and 2030. As you look from left to right across the screen, you can see how the increase of the black bar, which represents the 65 and older cohort, you can see how that is impacting the data. In fact, this past Sunday, the Wall Street Journal published this graph with an article underscoring the fact that more people over 60 want and need to continue working. Yet this cohort of talent tends to be the most overlooked when it comes to hiring, training, promoting, and retraining. And for Black and brown women, 65 and older, their chances are slim to none. The reality is that everyone, anyone, regardless of how they identify, can potentially be impacted by age bias, stereotypes, discrimination, and assumptions because everybody ages. At the same time, 10,000 folks a day continue to turn 65. The birth rate is declining, and falling fertility rates mean that nearly every country could have shrinking populations by the end of the century. And while many predicted another baby boom when COVID hit, the opposite is actually true, with the birth rate dropping around the world in 2020, including the US, where the birth rate dropped 7%. Right now, we have as many people turning 80 as there are babies being born. Essentially, what we have, working populations whose average age is increasing and will continue to increase, yet the average age of the workplace is not mirroring that fact. But age-related challenges are not confined to the US. It's a global phenomenon. In fact, the World Health Organization and United Nations have been addressing this issue for the last decade on a global scale. Last year, they released a 200-page report defining a myriad of ways that ageism manifests in both younger and older people. Like the World Health Organization and the UN, Age Equity Alliance approaches the issue of age equity across the age spectrum because we know that ageist beliefs develop in childhood, carry through to our teens and early adulthood, and throughout our life. It is cyclical, which means we must disrupt the cycle to change everything. And it takes everyone across the age spectrum, recognizing what age bias looks like, the ways we individually express ageism toward ourselves and others, and helping others do the same. It's about challenging the assumptions on which the bias is based. It's about committing to change. Ageism is not just an old person problem. It's about all of us. And we need people of all ages on board, because if younger people want to avoid the fate that many older workers have already experienced and continue to experience, they need to help define what the workplace should look like and help shape the policies and processes and even legislation to safeguard their own work futures. If we don't provide employment opportunities for older workers, the projected number of persons 65 and older living in poverty is expected to double. If we don't change the workplace culture around age, younger workers will also age out of work, meaning they will have a limited number of years to achieve financial security to last them to age 100. And yes, it is predicted that most born in this century in developed countries will live to see their 100th birthday. We need a new and healthier narrative around aging and work. How else can we adapt to a 60 or 80-year work life with safe on-ramps and off-ramps and on-ramps and on and off-ramps in order to ensure continued health and wellness? We must build bridges across the age spectrum to create this new narrative, to create a workplace that is safe and accepting for all of us to work in and age in. The most significant disruption the workplace needs right now is the creation of genuinely diverse, age-inclusive workplace culture where employees are given the opportunity to develop and contribute meaningfully, regardless of their age or any other dimension of diversity. And this is why companies need to include age as part of their DEI programming. When companies become focused on age inclusion and age equity, then employees will receive the awareness building, the training, the education that they need to learn to recognize their own biases and hold themselves and those around them accountable for change. And that takes DEI strategy, programming, and leadership accountability. I'll wrap up with a true story, one that underscores the urgency of workplace age equity and how it can potentially foster a greater sense of employee belonging. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with a man of 31 working in the tech industry. He became aware of age bias when his manager, who wasn't even 40, said that he was putting as much money into savings as he possibly could in preparation for losing his job. The younger employee was shocked because he considered his manager exceptionally capable. When he asked what made the manager think his future with the company was uncertain, the manager replied, "Because I'm almost 40, and that's old in this business." It had nothing to do with performance. It had nothing to do with skill or competency. It had everything to do with his age and the perception of age in his industry and society. At that moment, fear became an unexpected shadow threat in the younger employee's mind. That fear undermined his feelings of trust and the security of belonging at his company. His sense of safety had been disrupted in the realization that if he was lucky, he might have 10 years left. When exclusion of a certain group is embedded into the work culture, the safety of belonging is threatened for everyone. The exclusion of older workers is particularly unsettling, given that it predicts the future for every single person younger. And that threat becomes a shadow threat of ageism, undermining organizational trust and the sense of belonging. These are the types of messages that undermine belonging, and they have to be addressed and eradicated. Otherwise, no amount of diversity and inclusion effort will influence the ability of an organization to create the space for belonging. When age equity is incorporated into DEI strategy, companies can finally address how age-related assumptions, bias, myths, and stereotypes interfere with creating a truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. And I'll close with an obvious question. What one action can you commit to right now to create a more diverse, age equitable workplace? And to assist you with this call to action, Age Equity Alliance has created a private CoreNet resource page on our website, ageequityalliance.org/CoreNet. And there you'll find downloadable resource, no email required, that provides links to short videos, articles, and reports, as well as an opportunity to schedule a 30-minute complimentary consultation to ramp up your age equity efforts. And now it is my great pleasure to transition this program by introducing our panelists. CVS Health is a health care innovation company, and it's a company that I've long held in high regard when it comes to DEI programming, because they've been thinking about how to attract and retain older workers for over a decade. So they are way ahead of the game here, but also because they have built an exceptional team of highly talented experts to nurture a diverse, equitable, and inclusive work culture. Today, you'll be hearing from Leslie Rice, lead director with CVS Health. As a director for CVS Health since 2020, and with over 23 years with the organization, Leslie helps to fulfill the company purpose of bringing our heart to every moment of your health by attracting great people to CVS Health while developing strong loyalty with community partners, customers, clients, and patients. She leads the development, implementation, and execution of workforce initiative strategy within the geographical area and major markets of accountability, which includes the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Southern, and South Central parts of the United States. Leslie is a Philadelphia native, wife, and mother of two. She received her BS in business management from Thomas Jefferson University, formerly known as Philadelphia University. She serves on several boards, including the Burlington County Workforce Board, Pennsylvania Rehabilitation Association, which serves the community as a catalyst in the employment and development of people with disabilities, and the network of Jewish human services agencies. Leslie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheila.
And I also am pleased to introduce Lena Barkley, Manager, CVS Health. And Lena serves as the Workforce Initiatives Operations Manager for area markets that includes over 1,800 stores in 7 states, including Michigan, Kansas, Missouri, and Indiana. Lena has a 25-year history with CVS Health and was the project director for Career Prescriptions for Success, a registered apprenticeship and incumbent worker program that was funded by the U.S. Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration, and that started in 2005. It established the first national recognized apprenticeship for pharmacy technician, changing the landscape for apprenticeship in healthcare, and the work continues with grant support in Detroit, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and many projects throughout her states. Lena also serves as the board chair for Operation Able, Spectrum Human Services, and appointed member of the Detroit Employment Services Board for the City of Detroit, and this is her 3rd term. And she assists workforce development across the CVS Health enterprise. Welcome, Lena. So for the two of
So
you,
happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you on this virtual platform. I want to kick off with a few questions and then remind the listeners on the call that they can submit any questions in the chat below, and Brigitte will forward them to us. So, you ready to get started? All right. So many companies are just getting their heads around this idea that talent management should factor in the importance of employees or potential employees across the age spectrum. And this is something that CVS Health has been working on for over a decade. So Leslie, I'd like to start with you. What do you attribute to your company being so far ahead of the curve?
First, I want to say great presentation, Sheila. Really appreciate all of your comments and your information about this topic of ageism. And Lena and I are excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity today. So just a little bit about what we do here at CVS Health around workforce. We have the honor to be on a team called Workforce Initiatives that has been a part of the work that we do at CVS Health for a number of years. The origins of our team stem from the introduction of the WOTC tax credit program during the Clinton administration. And the founder of our department firmly believed that there were 51 states in the United States, and the 51st state was a state of poverty. It is the foundation and it is the underpinning of all of the work that we do in helping those that have been underrepresented or that have barriers to employment, to health, to education. We were one of those inaugural companies that were a part of bringing the WOTC tax credit to life. And what we want to do is to help individuals get on the path to employment and self-sufficiency through employment. So that's primarily what it is that we do. We started with that one population, but we've expanded since then, again, to communities that have faced barriers, systemic racism and the like. But those populations are individuals with disabilities, military, youth, mature workers, and our incumbent workers. And most recently, we've included faith-based and justice-involved individuals to those specific communities that the Workforce Initiative team will work on. So I'm going to turn it over to Lena right now, and then she's going to give you an overview of some of the work that she's been leading for our department.
And absolutely great presentation. Learned so much today. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about the talent pipeline group, mature workers that we call Talent is Ageless. And I'm co-chair that pipeline. And what we do, our strategy and primary goal is working with our partners to attract and hire, retain mature workers. I know that maturity counts. Our CVS lens is maturity counts. And often a mature individual brings an abundance of experience and skills. We try to leverage that intellectual capital throughout our workforce. Mature workers are often an untapped, really an untapped resource for hiring. And they become mentors in our workplace. And really in 2020, the data showed that we actually have 4,400 really people that were over the age of 55. We have blue chip partners that we work with. National Council on Aging, AARP, Easter Seals, National Hispanic Council on Aging, and many more. So we tap into that to really increase our pipeline and improve our footprint in the community. That's essential to what we do.
Wasn't it your organization that had the tagline, "Talent has no expiration date"?
Oh, yes, talent is ageless.
Oh, there we go. Talent is ageless. I love that. Talent is ageless.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So we know that age bias has the potential to impact anyone across every dimension of diversity. And for Black and Brown women, it's especially challenging because it adds the potential for this compounded bias and discrimination. And this really does speak to the fact that DEI is all inclusive. So in other words, addressing one aspect, but not addressing all of them still leaves women in particular at risk. So Leslie, again, going back to you, what thoughts do you have about reducing this triple threat for Black and Brown women?
You know, we have been extremely fortunate in that we are a part of strategic diversity management. It is what we do. It is a part of our DNA. But for a long time, the idea of otherism has been the unspoken. It has been the topic that when you hear all of the other isms that isn't mentioned. And for me and for those on my team, you know, when we talk about otherisms and when you get to the point within the organization that you can be in the room, what I focus on is making sure that I include all of those other voices that don't have the opportunity to be in the room yet. Because there was a point in time when I didn't have the opportunity to be in the room. So I feel it's extremely important for those that are privileged enough to hold that space in the room to do exactly that. We want to make sure that we bring in other voices. We want to make sure that we are inclusive in our desire to help others come into the organization, or just expressing what we know from an advocacy perspective about what others are experiencing, to the degree that we know that. And then there's also allyship. You know, this is not work that any individual, particularly, it shouldn't be the expectation of the underrepresented community to do this work alone. You know, we want to collaborate and partner and identify allies in our organization and within our community-based partnerships that can help us do this work. So those are the two main things as a leader within a Fortune 4. You know, I never would have thought that I'd be working for a Fortune 4 when I started, you know, over 23 years ago with this organization, that I would be here. But now that I'm here, I want to make the most of this opportunity and make sure that I hold space in the room. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to Lena to talk a little bit more about some of our enterprise programs that help in this area.
And really, we're really fortunate because to me, through our company, first of all, you have to really recognize that there is a problem. You know, there is a triple threat. And with that, CVS has actually had a stake really on the overall strategy and investment in social justice and equity. And with that, we've landed with education, housing, career pathways, especially with women of color. So I really want to pump right now our colleague resource groups. With that, we connect to women especially. I want to talk about the Black Colleague Resource Group, caregivers, faith. We want to talk about even all of those that land for us an opportunity to have a listening voice and advocate for that and bring awareness and change. And with that, our company really is represented with this purpose that we have to really bringing your heart to every moment of your health. Women are mothers, they are caregivers. We have to really represent, and we're there for single parents, providers. And with that, they're also managers, they're also directors, they're CEOs, and we want to support a healthy body, mind, and workplace. And we continue to really work on the bias discrimination that happens in the workplace. So it's really on the radar. We want to have those CRGs, those colleague resource groups, be the advocacy of what that listening is all about. And that's how we grow. That's how we change things in the industry. And we're so happy to have those.
And just to add a little bit more context to what Lena was saying about the CRGs, we have a CRG called Driven, and it's focused on the 5 generations that are currently in the workplace, and making sure that there's an opportunity for all of the generations to work together to support each other. You know, Lena mentioned mentoring. She mentioned how we allow those voices to also be in those rooms.
I love the fact that your resource group Driven includes all of the ages together,
Yeah.
because sometimes I see organizations who have one for the older employees and one for the younger employees, and then they're still stuck with, okay, how do we communicate with each other? How do we learn from each other? So I really like that. I wonder, Leslie and Lena, if I could just dig down a little bit into this concept of otherism, because that could be a new term for some people. And you talk about the ability to listen, and it's so important for managers of teams to have that ability to listen, because otherism isn't necessarily visible, is it?
Mhm. No.
Yeah, you know, it is and it isn't, Sheila, quite honestly. You know, as an example for otherism, you know, there are times when you look around the room and you notice who's in the room, but you also notice who's not in the room. Just as in a personal example, I have been in spaces where I have been the only person of color having conversations. And I will tell you that, you know, especially thinking of all that we've been through as a nation with social justice and equity and the murder of George Floyd. And, you know, what we don't want is to be the only voice in the room. So when I speak about otherisms, I want to make space to bring in other individuals from different backgrounds so they can speak for themselves. And I am not speaking on behalf of all of the Black colleagues within CVS Health or all of the Black colleagues, you know, at a certain level. And that's why I say it isn't and it isn't. We need to do a better job. And I would say that CVS has done, especially in recent years, a very good job of diversifying our talent and making sure that our organization reflect the communities in which we work and serve.
Thank you for that added explanation. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I've got to ask this question. The resources that CVS Health has put behind diversity, equity, and inclusion is honestly more than any other company I've seen. I mean, what do you have, like 50 team members working exclusively on building a diverse and inclusive culture? That's incredible. So what is, in the eyes of the company, the business impetus, and what is their vision for the future workforce? Leslie.
You are right, Sheila. Talk about a proud moment in 2020 when our then CEO stood up and basically made a pledge and said, we are going to invest $600 million into the efforts of social justice and equity. But keep in mind that the Workforce Initiatives team existed well before that. We have been around for more than 20 years, more than 2 decades doing this work, identifying communities that were underrepresented, underserved, that had various barriers. We've been at the grassroots level in this work. And as a member of the team, I would say we've done very well over the years. But this commitment by our CEO, and that has been continued by our current CEO, Karen Lynch, is to really focus on a couple of areas. And the investment is over 5 years to advance employees, community, and public policy initiatives, address inequity faced by Blacks and other disenfranchised community. And there were really 5 work streams that we're laser focused on. One of them was the department that Lena and I are a part of, Workforce Initiatives. We were able to expand our team. Now we're 60 plus strong, but also mentoring, sponsorship, development, advancement of diverse employees. We've also invested in training from our C-suite down for all of our employees on implicit bias and looking at promotion opportunities, looking at the development of members of our organization to help those to get a hand up and not a handout. Access to care is another area of focus for us. We have annually Project Health events where we are in the communities and we're going out and helping people to understand their numbers so that they can stay healthy and well. So for our department, our focus has always been on health and wellness, education, and workforce. We work at that intersection to make sure that those areas are covered. We do it in a variety of ways. We have 20 minutes for this. There's no way I could go into all of it, but just let me say that we are a strong and mighty team. And the business imperative, again, is to make sure that we have all voices at the table when we're solutioning for problems around health, wellness, and education and workforce.
And I just want to add that we have such a diverse team and the ages range. And so we have new people that can be mentored by our seniors. Anyone in their 20s and 30s coming on to myself, that is, I actually proud to say that I am 70 now, working in this lane. And it's so imperative that we all have a voice and we're working together to make and have results.
So Leslie, you mentioned implicit bias, and I just have to go back and touch on this because it gets such a bad rap sometimes. But how else are we supposed to train if we don't talk about implicit bias? What's your take on that?
Gila, I could really launch into something that would take this session into a different direction, but I'm not going to do that. What I will say about what has become the bad rap of talking about diversity, I can't really wrap my brain around it. Personally, it just doesn't make sense. But we as an organization fully believe that it's important to not only talk about it, but to educate our leaders and our colleagues on implicit bias, understanding it, recognizing it, microaggressions, all of those aspects of diversity that an organization should look at. And I might be speaking out of turn a little bit, but as a member of diversity and inclusion, it should be looked at. It is something that is important. It is a business imperative in order for us to know who's not only a part of our workforce, but these are the people that we're serving. These are our patients and our customers. And we will not be able to be successful if we don't go down that path of educating and learning about each other and how we can work together in order to make what we do better. So I'm going to stop there.
And Lena, I saw you shaking your head up and down, so got to hear what you got to say.
Well, what the lenses that we work under is that, we're just not the stores, the centers, but we're embedded in the community. So we have to know that environment. And our team represents that, how we can leverage from each other and mentor each other, and then have the results that are driven. We're a health innovation company, and our job is to move in the lens of housing and education and making sure that everyone has an equal playing field with that. So that's what we want to leverage.
I hear you. All right, so let's talk about the work of a DEI practitioner. It is not for the faint of heart. It takes long-term vision. It takes endless patience. But it's not easy for the employee either, who's often being asked to come to the table with an open mind and to set aside all their assumptions and become the quote change we all want to see. And that can sometimes feel like a lot of pressure. So what are some of the most effective programmatic efforts that CVS Health has executed that really move the needle? And if you could only recommend one activity for a smaller company, what would it be?
That's such a great question. And, it really is about the work that you do with your leaders. I think your leadership team sets the stage for a lot of the other pieces to happen. So for a small company, I would encourage them to do the work to identify resources in order to become knowledgeable about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and lead your team. Some of the things that we do that helps to move the needle, recognition is extremely important. Again, that's easy to do for any individual, any size organization, to be open and to be welcoming to other individuals from other populations or communities that are coming into your organization. It takes everyone in order to do this. You are absolutely correct. The work is hard. It is long-term. It is not for the faint of heart. We can talk about programs and partnerships that have taken years to cultivate. There really is no there. You just keep moving forward and you keep doing the work. So starting at the top down, making sure that there are allies throughout your organization and incorporating it into your business imperatives. We focus on supplier diversity as well, smaller organizations. Make sure that where you get your supplies from, that you have a diverse population or pipeline of vendors that you're going to. That's another area, an aspect that they could help in. I'm going to turn it over to Lena to talk about a few of the programs that we have, and she'll give you more insights into those.
Do we have to just label it to one? I mean, it's so important that, even for a small business, I think my first thing would be to take the pulse of your employees. So I love our engagement survey. With that, you've got a sense of, what are they feeling? What are their expectations? What are they looking to receive? Your people come first. When you have your people first, then the results are going to be within that range of letting them know that they are, accounted for, that they feel passionate about the work and they're okay, That's what we want. So you're getting that explanation from that engagement survey. And then the other thing for me is just clear goals and communication. You've got to have communication all the time. So have it open, have open dialogues, open forums. We have that at CVS, and it's clear and precise. The other thing, you got to have that investment. You've got to take, as Leslie said, the investment in training and education. We've launched through the Black Colleague Resource Group with that talk and information that driven out of the silo and into the voice. You have a chance. We have our first recognition of Martin Luther King Day as a corporate holiday. We have our connection to the HBCUs. And then again, I'm going to pump up colleague resource groups. Colleague resource groups are so important. They are the voice. So if they do anything else, is just taking that look at your employees and having them respond to these groups.
So we have a few minutes left, and I've got one more question before we turn over to what our audience questions might be. And okay, both of you have been with CVS Health for more than 20 years. And so that makes me wonder about recruitment, not recruitment, but retention, recruitment and retention. But what are the policies and tools and practices that you have in place that helps to retain this talent across the age spectrum? What keeps people at CVS Health?
Lena, I'll start if you don't mind.
Okay.
I think having a clear goal from the C-suite helps. We have a purpose. We know why we're here, and we know that what we do matters. One of the things that I just love the most about CVS is that, and I've seen it in other places where it hasn't happened, is that HR, or our chief people officer, is at the table. We can't serve our communities, our customers, our patients without having a good strategy around people. It just won't work. It's not sustainable. So, one of the things that we do here, and we talked about how hard this work is, right? That it's challenging, it can be difficult. We also make the time for each other and the time to have fun. We have been, unfortunately, like everyone else, virtual since this pandemic started. We are used to being with each other. We are used to that connective tissue between our teams. We're at 50 plus 60 individuals now. Some members of my team I haven't met in person yet. And it's important. And I think that we all, as a nation, as a world, we've lost something because of that. But the things that keep us and keep us going, there's such opportunity within our organization. We are so large that you don't have to stay in one business unit. There's an opportunity to see what is on, in another business unit and to try out for that. There's clear development opportunities. We want to make sure that our people are knowledgeable and educated, not only about our business, but about our impact. Lena had mentioned mentorship and the opportunity to work together. An individual leader, I have the not only the responsibility, but I have the privilege of being creative with my team. I have members on my team in their 20s up to, Lena said, celebrated 70 on Christmas, in 2021. So I have a 50-year swing on my team, but we're supportive of each other. We are there for each other. And I make sure that that's built in how we work together. And also flexible schedules. I'm gonna quiet down for a minute and let Lena add what she wants to add to this conversation as well.
Well, Leslie covered quite a bit. And the only thing I really want to drill on is passion for helping people. That's really what this is all about. So, that keeps us motivated. And I think driven to people coming to CVS is that they have a passion for helping people. We move people out of poverty. We help them with their healthcare needs. That's our purpose and our vision. So that's the driven of what brings me to work every single day and keeps us grounded in the work that we do in our communities as well.
Well, thanks to both of you for answering the questions that I had. And now it is time to turn over and see what our participants have sent in. All right. So here's a question. On the CVS journey, can you identify one or two changes over the years that advanced a more inclusive organization, not just a diverse organization, or one that you think has been most impactful? Who wants to take it?
Yeah, I'll take that. I would say it is the education that we provide to our business leaders around the communities that we specifically are responsible for helping to bring into the organization. So when we talk about, Lena had mentioned the mature worker group that she's on. We've renamed that to, these are our councils. These are populations that we focus on, and our team is there to help to get the information, the education, the advocacy, the training to our hiring leaders, our business leaders, and to our colleagues. It is not easy to get that information down to the colleague level. It is one of our challenges. However, we continue to work within the space of our leaders, our district leaders, our store managers, to have them understand and then cascade that information down to our hourly employees. So, I think that is what we do consistently and what does help to move the needle. Participating in events like this, we have an annual diversity leadership forum where our colleagues are invited. The works that we do in the community, that our team are, they're local. They're talking to district leaders and store managers, and they're making that connection, and they're bringing them into the work that we do to have them more aware and better educated around individuals with disabilities, mature workers, youth, military. So we do a lot of that work, and we have colleague resource groups that helps us to get that work down to the colleague level. Lena, you want to add anything else?
I just want to say the journey is what our department has been founded on, is working with partnerships. And with those partnerships, we actually have really a mechanism for referrals. We, work with workforce boards and agencies to actually cultivate that training mechanism, hiring mechanism, and collectively we can actually try and get the employment that people want. And what Leslie said, we're a vast, I call us the Starship Enterprise, because we're really vast in so many opportunities that we can bring to a person, whether it be Edna or in a retail store. We're really that judiciary of referrals, trying to give people an opportunity often that wouldn't have a chance otherwise. So I love that journey, moving in, and you start maybe at an entry level and you can move up. If you want to come on board, we have the opportunities there.
So I think that both of you have addressed this question somewhat, especially with reference to the colleague resource groups, but to honor the question, I'm going to ask it. And that is there a look at making your facilities more equitable beyond ADA? Who would like to take it?
Yeah, so it's hard for us to speak on that. Our lane is workforce development. However, when we have that opportunity to build some of our own training sites, we call them WITCs, Workforce Innovation and Talent Centers, and we do these sites in partnership. As Lena mentioned, these community-based organizations that help us identify talent that has barriers or underrepresented or underserved. We can get involved with making sure that the spaces are accessible, making sure that there's a way for them to get in and out of the building, making sure that they're the right spacing if they have mobility challenges, and looking at accommodation that the individual might be requesting. So while we are not on the real estate side of the house, the work that we do and what we're able to share helps inform them on what it is that they can do to make our buildings more accessible and inclusive.
Or I just want to say the communication is there, because what is so great about our team and having that communication lens is that we can actually have a conversation with, workforce or rehabilitation, and work together to see how we can accommodate that person coming into CVS. So those partnerships help. Across that, what are their needs? What do they need to have happen? Sometimes we can do that. Sometimes we can adjust. Sometimes we can actually be that lens that picking up a phone and say, oh, we're doing an externship, and maybe there's a particular store that a candidate can go to that fits that bill, so they can move on and be successful in their quest to become a technician. So there's opportunities there. And so the communication is key, because we can often pick up a phone and get that directive to how we can assist.
Excellent. Okay, next question. If there is no quote there, why are folks obsessed with metrics? Do we have to be obsessed with metrics?
I think that there are some people that are naturally obsessed with metrics. I am not one of them. I know the numbers are important, and I want to make sure I know my numbers. It's like with your health. There's no there, but there kind of is when it comes to knowing your own health metrics and making sure that you're on your path to your best life. So, the data is important. The data informs our team on communities that we need to be in. It's part of the reason why we grew our team over the past year, is to make sure that we had more resources because of the investment that CVS Health made, to go into those communities that we know are dealing with social determinants of health, which also is an underpinning for the work that we do. Transportation is an issue, healthcare, housing, there are about 8 dimensions of the social determinants of health. We need to know that, and those metrics are important. They inform us to make sure that we are where we need to be, partnering with who we need to be, and we know the numbers of the formerly incarcerated or the individuals with disability. If you hadn't read, the number of individuals with disabilities employed has gone up during the pandemic and not down like some other populations have. So, there's a lot of us that are doing the work to help those with barriers to be self-sufficient. Lena, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I just totally agree. We just need to have the information. We have the knowledge. We've invested a lot of money, as Leslie said, to just be that lens for people to actually advocate with. So we continue that fight, and it's not going to always be, things that are on point all the time and urgent at this moment and can get it done. At times it's steps and it's hard work and we do it. But every day I come to work, I see a good change. I love it when a person calls me and say, I landed a job, or you've got a person that you know has started at the beginning and now they moved up in a position. So we all that have that ability to make that happen. I think that's so important.
So we have another question here. From a DEI perspective, does your group interface with the wonderful work CVS Health is also doing around community health equity, much of which appears to be led by your CMO, Dr. Kyrie?
Yes, it's it's really interesting for myself and Lena too, to be on the team as long as have been on the team. And years ago, we were relegated to the side a little bit in terms of people just didn't know what we were doing and the impact that we were having, particularly in partnerships and in communities. But once that was discovered, we have the opportunity now. If we're not directly involved, then we are an enabler. We're providing support in some type of way, shape, or form. I'd mentioned Project Health that is in several communities. We went from 10 and now I think it's 15 or 20 that we're involved in. You know, we've had a Project Health event at one of our WITSEs. You know, are we directly involved? We're not clinicians. That's not what we do. But we do have a lot of information because we are on boards, we are in the communities, we are talking to these populations that are underserved. And again, we're bringing their voices into the room with us.
And I just want to say it's nice to be part of the room, you know, part of the solution now. So absolutely. And we are the pulse. When you're out there talking to the people, you know, 2020 stopped that a little bit, but there's nothing better than connecting with a partnership and seeing what their needs are. We're looking at food and equity. We're looking at health. We're looking at, yes, we do flu clinics, all of those things that happened in COVID. That was coming from what we learned from our community partners and the people that we serve every day. So we're here to help, and it's great to be in the room.
And I think we have a few minutes left. We'll squeeze this one in. Any recommendations on data collection methods, especially in regard to establishing baselines?
Well, we are very fortunate to have others on our team that work on data collection methods. Lita and I don't work on developing the software. We did get new software that another director is working on that to get that stood up. So for whoever sent that question if we have the opportunity to respond to some of these, give a little bit more insight, then maybe we can do that. But yeah, data collection. I mean, we collect data as an enterprise. You know, Aetna has all sorts of data that they provide. Our operations team, our pharmacy ops team, there's all sorts of data and information that we can work on, but we do collect our own. We put a lot of that on our partners. Our partners do a lot of data collection for us, and then we figure out a way to get it into the system that we can work with.
Wonderful. Ladies, it has been a pleasure spending time with you on this virtual platform. Again, on behalf of CoreNet Global, Age Equity Alliance, and CVS Health, thank you, each and every one of you who joined today. It has been a real honor. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.